Joaquin Phoenix plays a neurotic weirdo who gets himself into all kinds of mischief. No, it's not the film Her, or Joker, or I'm Still Here, or even The Master. I'm talking about Beau. He goes on an epic adventure to make it back to his mother and bumps into all sorts of characters along the way in Beau is Afraid. Hello there, you loose units, and welcome back to another episode of Spicy Boy Reviews. I'm, of course, your host, Andrew Isles. That's right, Beau is Afraid, written and directed by Ari Aster, who is known for directing Hereditary, which was a superb horror film, and Midsommar. We are introduced to Beau here, a neurotic hypochondriac who has some serious mummy issues. Think Norman Bates level of... As the title of the film suggests, Beau is afraid of absolutely everything. And not surprising either, because he lives in the worst neighbourhood in the world. It's chock full of junkies, homeless people, blatant crime and murder with blood in the streets, and no one gives a shit. Think of the suburb as a cross between Frankston, Shepparton and Gotham City. He's supposed to catch a flight early in the morning to go visit his mummy poos, who we come to learn is incredibly emotionally manipulative. However, not surprisingly, his worst fears come true. He has a sleepless night involving his schizophrenic neighbour, his keys and luggage are stolen from the front of his apartment, and the entire neighbourhood of junkies, homeless people and criminals all literally crash his apartment and party throughout the night inside. The next morning, Beau is awkwardly notified that his mother has died in a freak accident involving a chandelier. It's then up to Beau to get to his mother's funeral as soon as possible, because in her last will and testament, she informed that she doesn't want to be buried unless her only son is present. So time is of the essence. Then the shit hits the fan with the worst case scenarios happening to Beau. And everything all spirals out of control in this epic adventure trying to make it back to his mother's funeral. Leads him on a quest here where he bumps into some rich grieving parents, a serial naked stabber, a PTSD suffering soldier here with some serious arsenal, forest-dwelling cosplayers, and an art installation story time that would make Disney's The Volume jealous. Oh, and some life-ending dicking. Fair to say that this film is fucking batshit crazy. It's a nightmare fever dream that's darkly humorous and hilarious, with elements of horror, suspense, and shock. I honestly loved this film from start to finish. It was the right amount of chaos and batshit crazy. The movie is anxiety-inducing, absolute chaos. And there was more than a few scenarios that I audibly laughed out loud and couldn't control myself with my laughter because I found them so funny that I think some people in the cinema probably questioned my sanity. It ramps up with some farcical madness that feels otherworldly and not grounded in reality, but then has tender moments. It juxtaposes the two. But don't get too comfortable, because this film is as subtle as a sledgehammer and it's going to kick your ass. This is all obviously from the perspective of our lead, Beau here. Hence why it felt like a bit heightened reality, because it's all through his eyes. He has high anxiety, high stress, massive hypochondriac, and always seems to expect the worst out of situations, which, not surprisingly ends up happening. But when it is the surreal moments, it is full-blown surreal and absolute chaos and madness. Kind of like if it was a live-action adaptation film of Sesame Street directed and written by John Waters. It is a 3-hour film, which I was a bit apprehensive about going into, but it's an absolute experience and I was engaged from start to finish. I will say though that the trial section in the final act of the film felt a bit long in the tooth and dragged a little bit for me. I was happy for it to wrap up. But this is also a part of the film where we sort of learn that Beau is not as innocent as he seems, or that we're led to believe. It touches on the theme of us as people, or Beau, in this instance, is kind of in control of your own destiny, and sort of the outcome of how you perceive life. He's obviously been emotionally abused by a manipulative mother, who I guess had good intentions, but the outcome is Beau's ended up kind of like this. But see, Beau is like, he expects the worst out of life and is afraid of everything. But he also always plays the victim, like it's all happening to him, which in this film, in his perspective, it does. It's quite potent stuff, really, sort of You know, we're seeing the perspective of Beau, say, well, us as people. If we're always playing the victim and always expect the worst and always apprehensive and scared of everything, we're kind of going to welcome that energy, really. And we need to sort of take responsibility for our own actions. Quite potent stuff in this day and age, I tell you what, because it seems like everyone's angry about something, playing the victim, it's all happening to them, and not taking responsibility for their actions. As subtle as a sledgehammer movie. There is a few twistsy twists here and there, and a bit of reveal in the climax, and oh, what a climax. Do you remember that ending shot in the film Enemy, with that massive tarantula in the living room in the final shot of the movie? Well, this film saw that ending and go, that's cute, and decided to project some big dick energy. I will have to spoil two things here, because I have to touch on it, I have to talk about it, because I've got an opinion. So you've been warned, if you haven't seen this film, spoiler alert! There is a segment in the film where Beau was introduced to his father in of his mother's house, which turns out to be massive, enormous male genitalia. Almost alien-like, it talks and moves. It's a dick and balls. My interpretation is this is technically his father in a way. This is, I guess, what Beau's mother thinks of his father. She probably doesn't even know who he actually is. He was just genitals, just a dick in the balls that planted a seed and impregnated her. She talks earlier in the film that she was impregnated at a very young age and it was her first time, as well as being the first time for Beau's father. So what I've come to believe is maybe this was like maybe a one-night stand or something, where Beau's mother got knocked up, so to speak, and she probably didn't even know who this guy was, didn't even know his name. It was a one-night stand. So to her, in her perspective, he's just genitals. He just impregnated her, so she probably doesn't even know who the father really is. She's probably got a face in mind, but at the end of the day, it's just genitals. But also, Beau's twin brother that was locked up there as a child actually is Beau. It's the part of Beau that can stand up to his mother, but because she's so overbearing and a bit manipulative, she's locked that part of Beau away in the basement with his father. Metaphor! Anyway, that's just my interpretation of it. I could be wrong, but it's fair to say I was a huge fan of this movie. I fucking loved it from start to finish. Absolute chaos, my kind of madness here. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what Ari Aster does in the future, because I loved Hereditary. I wasn't a huge fan of Midsommar. I knew what he was going for, I understood it, but it wasn't my favourite. This, however, I absolutely loved it. I will watch it again, maybe once a year. It's kind of one of those films, because it is quite long, it is very surreal. But yeah, I really, really loved it. But guys, that's my little cheeky review of Beau is Afraid. Write down below if you've seen it, if you're excited about it, and what's your thoughts on it? I'd love to hear your sort of interpretation of explanation of it in the comments. And of course, if you've made it this far into the episode, please give me a thumbs up, because your love and support keeps me going, because I just love movies, and I assume you do as well. And of course, hit that subscribe icon, because we give out episodes weekly, and I'll see you back here next week for the next review, and until then, stay spooky, kids.